coming up in today's episode of Called.
I was just really shocked that these kids weren't getting therapy, and how could these children be left behind? How come a typical developing child receives the services they need, but a child with special needs did not? Our therapy's free. Our parents are getting something they couldn't afford. Their kids are getting opportunities to grow and to have experienced wellness and health and all of those things.
Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and welcome to Called, a podcast from the Catholic Initiative, produced in partnership with Ascension. From the moment I joined the Catholic Initiative Board, I was inspired by the clarity of its mission. It's a mission rooted in the heart of the gospel, renewing the church by serving those most in need. By restoring parishes and by restoring schools, they're helping communities flourish and give witness to a faith that's meant to be lived. This podcast exists to share stories of courage, of mercy, and of hope that call each of us from belief into action. As Jesus teaches us in Matthew chapter 25, he said, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did for me." So every episode, we'll explore how ordinary people are answering that call in extraordinary ways, and how you and I can do the same. You know, St. Paul, writing to the Galatians, he wrote in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2, he tells us, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ." So, what does it mean to be called to serve families navigating disability? What does it mean to be called to serve families navigating uncertainty? We're joined today by Kristi Schena with nearly 30 years of clinical and supervisory experience in speech-language pathology. Kristi's dedicated her life to improving outcomes for children and families with special needs. She's an award-winning published professional and active leader in both volunteer and professional communities. She founded an organization called Kids on the Go in 1999, which is a nonprofit that provides no-cost therapy and enrichment programs to children who might otherwise go without care. Through a powerful blend of clinical expertise, fundraising, community building, and operational leadership, Kristi has built a model that has impacted nearly 5,000 children and their families, transforming both access to care and long-term opportunity. So, Kristi, welcome to Called.
Thank you for having me. Honored to be here today.
Thank you. I've said that lengthy introduction. I was like, all of these things that you've done. If you were to summarize, if you were to go back and say, okay, those who don't know me, here's who I am, here's what I do. How would you put it in your own words?
You said it so well in my description, but
thank you.
I think a speech pathologist really that I feel I always say God whispered in my ear over 30 years ago and really leading me in a direction that I did not feel that when I went to get my master's and where my path was taking me. So I think listening to his calling, which really you're going to hear about how the twists and turns have guided me. And now I know, and for the last 20 years, now I know exactly why he put me in this place and the stories that he would tell. And hopefully I'm, here to share that and to show others that what else they can do when God whispers in their ear.
Well, yeah, I can imagine, because you started as a speech pathology.
I did.
And so here you are. I mean, we have that degree on our campus. We have the undergrads who study, what is it? It's OL. What's the undergrad degree called?
I don't even know what so it changes. Every university calls it something different. So there's the undergrad, and then it's also audiology is mixed with the speech pathology for undergrad, and then you specialize for grad school.
In grad school. And so you're going into this teaching or believing like, okay, I'm going to serve those people who have speech issues. And how do you move from that place? The funny
twist is, Father Mike, my passion was hospital and acute care. My grandfather was a physician, founded Bon Secours Hospital in Grosse Pointe. My grandmother was a nurse. My mom was a nurse. My dad was in sales. But my passion was working with adults. I worked with cancer patients. I did head and neck cancer. I did patients who had tracheostomies, helped them learn to speak with a speaking valve, stroke patients. And the only way I got into pediatric therapy is when you worked in a hospital, you did outpatient pediatric. And that's really where my story started telling and God started really poking.
Wow. So you got into the medical field because you want to serve people. You had seen the need, and so you just kind of wanted to respond to this need. So in the middle of serving children, what was the moment that I guess you said, okay, I'm not the wrong word. I'm not just going to be a speech pathologist. I'm going to do something more. What would happen?
Yeah, I remember it specifically. I was a fairly new speech pathologist. I think it was my first year out of after my what we call clinical fellowship year, is working at a local hospital. And that spring started getting calls from parents looking for summer therapy for their children. So being very naive, at the time we had to do our own insurance checks and called, and the insurance companies would say this child does not have benefits. They felt that the children receive those benefits from the school systems, which they do, but not during the summer.
Right.
So being naive again, I called the hospital billing department and said, well, what is it out of pocket, for a parent to come to therapy? So this is in the late 90s. Back then it was $45 for 15 minutes of therapy. So let's just imagine a child with Down syndrome who needs more than one therapy. And I can tell you it's more than 15 minutes a week.
Yeah.
So I kind of turned to a colleague and I kind of joke and say, my dad being in sales, my mom with medical, kind of took both of, those things that they gave me and said, well, let's approach the community about supporting a child to attend their camp so they can get the therapies since they can't afford it. It was in a lower income area at the time. And that's kind of how Kids in the Go started. Really was to sponsor a child. But at first, we actually tried a tuition-based camp, and parents said they still couldn't afford it. There's true medical costs. So then I approached the community and found that at the time we had about 4 sponsors that came through, and we had a budget of $6,500. And the hospital at the time gave us a room in the basement, and we worked with the local intermediate school district and really saying, hey, we want to help fill that summer gap, because what we find is with a child with special needs, they set them up through the end of the school year with what's called an individualized educational plan and their goals for the next school year. But if you have a summer off, think of a typical developing, let's say even college student, right? It takes a while to get back in the groove. For elementary child, refresh those skills they've lost over the summer. If you have a child with special needs, it can take till December to catch up. Their teachers and therapists will tell you that. So our goal was really to kind of fill that summertime gap. So the first year we had 13 children in the basement of the hospital. And it was so successful, we kept going. And then the hospital at the time, for the first 12 years, I believe we were under an umbrella of a hospital, their 501c3.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it started. And then as a speech pathologist, I was working at different hospitals, and the president of the hospital would come to me and say, well, I saw you on the news. Why are you doing that here if you're working here? Can we bring it here? So then I would change hospital systems or, where I went. And then this story back in 2012, our advisory board said, okay, it's time that we become an independent nonprofit. And at that time, we were working at different sites. We'd have a couple different places that we were holding programs at, and the program kept growing just from what we started with children ages 3 to 6. And parents would say, now what do I do? My child's 7, or, my child doesn't get this therapy. And that's kind of how it started going.
Wow.
And kept going.
Well, okay, I'm going to get to that in a second, but what was it in you that said, okay, I see this need, I'm going to fill the need? Like that sense, I imagine that there are a lot of speech pathologists out there who work in pediatrics and could see that need. But what was it in if you can remember, what was it in you that were
I think it was a calling I didn't recognize at the time. Does that make sense yet? It was, you're going to hear a little bit more like where I finally knew that God had whispered in my ear that this is what I was intended to do, right? At the time when I started this, I was not married and I did not have children. I was, I had a lot of energy. So I was working as a speech pathologist doing this. And I just recognized the need. But I think now with my faith, again, as it's grown through the years, as we all grow in our faith, looking back and saying, no, that was really God calling me to do this. I mean, because where did I, again, wasn't working with pediatrics. I never worked in a school system. I didn't have children of my own yet. I didn't have any family members that were affected. So where did this come from, right? So I guess I know the answer now. At the time, I didn't know, right? So
what was that feeling, though? I mean, if you remember, again, I don't want to keep asking the same question, but was there a sense of just, so we have a motto here. We say, see a need, fill a need. Is that all it was at the time in your mind?
The Hallow app, the prayer this year, MTV Fill Me, Use Me, that really hit home. And I think that if you had asked me, I think that was, again, the see the need, fill the need. And nobody was doing it. And it's kind of been my motto too. And when there's a calling for a new program or something new for us to do, I look around the community, is it being done? And if not, well, then let's do it. Let's fill that need. And I think that's what I saw back then. It was like, I was just really shocked that these kids weren't getting therapy, and, being a caregiver and a speech pathologist. And that's what I was called initially to do, right? My ministry was to serve in that way. How could these children be left behind? How come a typical developing child receives the services they need, but a child with special needs did not? And not only do they need their therapies, some of these children, have a child with Down syndrome at the time who had a heart condition, which a lot of children with Down syndrome do, and also had been diagnosed with leukemia. And so had missed so much school, and their medical expenses, everything was drained.
Yeah.
And Kids in the Go was such an answered prayer for them because their daughter was finally getting the therapy to help catch her up after missing so much school. So those were those early signs of this is what's needed and why I need to keep going. I would say, how did I come up with the name Kids in the Go? I'm always on the go. But and I think it means more today of just really keeping these children moving and keeping them going through the years.
Wow. That's remarkable. It started 13 that first summer.
Yes.
And then just kept growing.
Yes.
How did you manage that growth? Or was that a situation where you were the one speech pathologist, you're the one caregiver, or did you recruit other people?
I was the one. However, I'm the executive director, the founder, but I always say, there should be a D after Go for God. He is my executive director. And I'm always, humbled and trying to remember to trust in his plans for this program.
Yeah.
So how did I keep going? It really was, again, asking parents what they needed, or parents saying, my child needs this, or my child can't play a mainstream sport. They're cut from the team or the bench for me. So how we developed our baseball program. A lot of it was people coming into my life. My kids were little and they were like 3 and 4 playing like an intro baseball league. And this coach had the patience of a saint. And I went up to him and I said, if you can coach 3 and 4-year-olds how to play baseball, you can coach special needs children. And that was like in the spring of one year. 9 months later, out of the blue, it was right before Christmas. He called me. He's like, I'm in. I'm like, you're in for what? He's like, well, let's do this. And that was the first sports program we introduced.
Wow.
Where, I'd have a therapist say, I've always wanted to teach this. And I truly believe, I believe in culture of who you work with, right? That positive culture. And I believe in Kids in the Go has been successful for so long because of the therapists in the village around me. And most are really faith-based, which has been so joyful for me to have a community where, yes, we're not a Catholic or Christian nonprofit organization, but we pray together. We've done Bible studies together. And, they're there to lift me up, that team of mine. Now we're about 60 staff, 5 on our administrative team. But it was me up until about 2018. So a long time, just me.
Yeah, I can imagine that the iteration from then 2019 and 2018 until now is a whole nother level of trying to figure out the problem and trying to figure out the next solution.
Yes, but that's where God's always been a part of it, but there were so many obvious signs to me from 2018 and up of where God has really put people in my life too. So that's part of the story too, the growth, right?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think you said you started when you weren't married, didn't have any kids. No. That mission, though, ultimately became pretty personal to you and your family.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Yeah, this is a great story. So it was about 9 years into running the program. My husband and I were blessed with 3 children. At the time, this story, my oldest was almost 3 and my twins were almost 1. And my husband came home at night from work. And how it would work is, it was like passing the baton. I was working during the day. I was trying to work part-time as a speech pathologist, sometimes weekends. And I'd be like, okay, pass, the kids are this, I'm going in the office to work. And he came home one night frustrated and said, we can't do this anymore. This is not good for our family. And I said, okay, I get it. Give me 1 more year. This is my baby before all of you. I have to figure out, let me get to my 10th year and figure out how to pass this offer to be able to close this. And he said, okay. Within 3 months of that conversation, one of my twins, Luke, who the pediatricians had said, oh, he's just a boy. You're comparing him to his sister, and girls advance more. We were at a Kids in the Go event, and one of my physical therapists picked him up and said, have you had him evaluated yet? Because he wasn't walking yet. And I said, I've been thinking about it. And she goes, I think you should. And Luke was diagnosed with hypotonia, low muscle tone from head to toe. That's why he wasn't keeping up with his sister. So we instantly began therapies, and that diagnosis. And I remember the first thing I asked the doctor, she's amazing. And I said, is it something I did? I'll get emotional. And she goes, no, it's just how God made him. And I think that was such a powerful statement for me to share with other families through the years. Like, there is no guilt or no, with parents. This is just God's plan for us. And how do we support and carry each other through some of these tough times. So
Yeah.
Luke began his therapy, and our insurance did not cover his braces that he wore in his legs to strengthen him. Those were $1,000 every time he outgrew them. And if you think of how fast a toddler grows,
Right.
and then Luke did great. He actually went into the program when he was 3, in the entrance year of our program. He was in it for a couple years. Kindergarten, he outgrew his therapies, just had to remain active. But he struggled. He was on the CYO teams and he was often benched. And so we carried that title of a parent as a child with special needs.
Yeah.
The cost that went along with it, the heartache for your child sometimes. Also, we often forget about the siblings of a child with
Right.
special needs. They were dragged along to therapy sessions and wanted to know why they couldn't go and play in the gym. And also blessed by family who would help and take care of them. So because we didn't have financially the money to be paying babysitters, so I could take off to go take Luke to his therapies and leave the other ones behind. So that was really an entry. Then it was like that aha moment of, okay, God, this is why you put me on this path, because I was in touch with the right people and I had the right resources, and I had families that lifted me up, and then there was more. My oldest, when he was in 3rd grade, collapsed, and we thought he was in the shower, and we thought he was gone. He was unresponsive, was bleeding,
Wow.
came to with a seizure, ambulance ride to the hospital. They thought it was heart. It wasn't until a year later when he collapsed again, serving at Mass, and the priest caught him. And we found out with more testing that he had a rare form of epilepsy.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was another instance where that was the first time I remember feeling like I couldn't pray myself, but feeling the prayers from everyone else around me. And there's something I tell people that when they're angry at God, like, it's okay. He expects you to be angry, but just ask others to pray for you because you will get through it. And the peace that brought from others praying was one of the most powerful experiences I felt. And and both my kids are doing great today. They're
How
all
old are
in
they now?
college. Yeah, AJ's graduating from college in a month from Hope College, and he's
Wow.
doing great. He outgrew the epilepsy in high school. Went off all his meds. Not that there weren't so many struggles in there, but my kids all, I'm very proud of, a beautiful faith, are active in Hope Catholics in Holland, Michigan, and Seek and Focus Ministries. And AJ does unified basketball. They all have grown up volunteering for Kids in the Go and have
Yeah.
learned empathy and compassion probably more than others by being around it. When they were little, we'd be in the grocery store, and if a child maybe would be having a meltdown, and they look at me and say, Mom, maybe they should be in Kids on the Go, because they recognize that maybe the child was autistic and needed some help, right?
Yeah.
So I think growing up with them has given them a gift too. And they all have that certain passion now for special needs as well. And Luke's doing great too. He went on, the kid who couldn't get, had a hard time being on a team, went on in high school to go on the golf team and the bowling team. And his senior year made it all the way to states for bowling. So,
Wow.
and he's 6'3", and you would never know. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
So, I
Well,
remember before I had a kids, Father Mike, I'd pray and say,
yeah.
God, just give me something that's treatable or fixable through therapy or meds, And
Right.
he did. It's been wasn't always easy, but I know God was there next to us all the time. So,
Wow. That's a remarkable, even that sense of your being able to identify even more closely to not just the struggles you mentioned, like here's babysitters, here's these bills, but even the those questions that just kind of naturally arise, like you had mentioned. Is it pretty common, I imagine, for parents to say, is it something we did?
100%.
And just that tendency to blame yourself when it's like, and to have someone like you or someone like your associates be able to say, no, it's not something you did. This is like either,
And
it's
the
how
why
God made
me?
them.
The why
Yeah.
me is common, and you feel guilty asking that because you love your children no matter what, And that's a question I know I've dealt with parents, like,
Yeah.
you tend to look at other families around you. Well, they don't have those chances. Their kids are fine. They play the sports or not. And you do go through that, and you learn to accept that and count your blessings too. And I would say we celebrate milestones differently. Some families celebrate those big mountain climbs, and we celebrate the baby steps that get us to the top of the mountain, right? We just get there a little slower.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to that big question and the why me question, was there ever a way that you kind of, how have you navigated that question, or how have you seen people really successfully navigate that question when they're in the midst of, because it's not even just like why me, in the sense of, but it's why them, like why us, why my child that I love so much. How have you navigated that question?
Well, do you know, I think this one thing I didn't expect the Kids in the Go is this family. We truly call ourselves the Kids in the Go family, and that support of lifting each other up when we need it most. And a lot of our families are faith-based and have lifted me up, or then you turn around, they're having a bad day. And so it's, I don't hear the why me as much. I think you hear it more in the beginning, but later we really look at it as blessings. Our kids, maybe we take life we look at it a little bit sweeter, and maybe we take each day a little bit slower, and maybe we're not on the road as much as the travel teams, and have a little bit more family time. It's like, how can we look at it just in a different lens? I'll never forget, there's a family, his name's Michael, and you met Michael at St. Anne's. He has Down syndrome.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. And Michael, what you don't know about Michael is he was diagnosed with cancer when he was, I believe, 13 years old. Wow. And lots of, questions. And I took Michael down to Father Solanus Center to get blessed by Father Solanus's relic. And Father Tom looked at Michael and he said, Michael, you're pure joy. And I think that's such a way we look at now again, I say kids, some of the kids I've worked with now are in their 20s. I'll tell you a fun story about them later. But is the joy that they have brought their families and just the innocence. And sometimes, like one mom said to me, I don't have to worry about the pressure of my child going to college and getting a job and doing this. It's just kind of pure joy all the time. Like it's every, day is a gift. So I think it's just how we walk families through. You all grieve. It's like that we talk about those stages of dying, right? Like you kind of go through those same grieving stages when you get a diagnosis, right? With a child with special needs. It's the denial, the anger, and then you get to that acceptance. And then, so there's those stages you just kind of go through. But when you can add the faith component to this, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. When you know that there's a God who loves you, and a God who, like, this all means something. It all matters. And he can use it all, and that he's not abandoning you in this. I think that's
yes, holding your hand, the Blessed Mother holding her hand all the way as a mother. She understands. Yes.
Well, you had so much growth and so much just success in walking with families and walking with the young people. But were there ever moments where other than when you had a conversation with your husband, where it's like, I don't know, and he's like, hey, I don't know if you can keep doing this. Were there ever moments when you questioned whether or not you could keep going in this mission that you were entrusted with?
The most recently. 2020 was obviously a challenge, but that was another one where I felt like back when I first started, like I just got this energy and this power to say, I'm not going to let this beat me. We're going to beat it. And we did. And we were so successful we held 9 outdoor sports programs. It was challenging. Every kid had a basketball or football that matched their jersey number. The families didn't get any respite because they became their child's playing partner. Instead of having flag football, we did an NFL combine, like our own combine program, and they showed off their skills. And we did virtual, and we did have one class that was face-to-face through it all. But that was where I really felt the Lord energize me. But the biggest challenge I had coming up on the 2-year anniversary was in May of 2024. I got a phone call from, at the time, the maintenance director here at Southlake. So I'm in a former elementary school in Southlake Schools. It had been closed for 10 years and became a nonprofit center in 2017. And I was blessed with this opportunity to move here. And it really turned Kids in the Go from what we were just a summer program to a full year, academic year program. Outdoor space, classrooms, expansion opportunities, and really just a blessing to the organization. It's such a big growth time for us. So now, fast forward 2024, I get the call that the building's being sold. And we had always been told that we'll never sell it. It's never going anywhere. You're fine. Our contracts were always, renewable. It was just kind of this whatever. So really I really fell on my knees. Literally fell on my knees in tears that day because I had that burden. I get emotional. All those families, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And lots of ups and downs. And we were told in November it was going to be torn down. And then in January of 25, United Way said they were going to save the day and they're going to take over the building because it needed a new roof. And there was no funds to put a roof on the building without kids in the building anymore. So they made a commitment, and then they backed out in May of 2025. amazing, interesting year here, a month here.
Yeah.
And went through a lot and really was trying to work with the school board and saying, how can we, what's this business plan? Can we, their superintendents, they're running schools, they're not into this business model of what I was looking at. And thought we could make a go of it. And just last November, they notified me that they could not keep the building going, that it's not only does it need a roof, the hot water's not working in the building, and then I needed to make other plans, and that they would renew my lease through August of this year. So started, a capital campaign, a lot of prayer, more ups and downs as it goes, and a challenge here in Detroit. You might know the Archdiocese of Detroit's in a restructuring.
Right.
So there's a lot of great places around me that are perfect, but the Archdiocese said no leases right now. So there's spaces with classrooms and gymnasiums that I can't even go into. And I've been called, but I'll give you this much money. Because my colleagues and I remember touring the one when this all first happened, thinking, how perfect would it be to be in God's house and to run our program and have, this one pastor said, I would love to have a center of the Corporal Works of Mercy. And he's got blessings in a backpack and all of this. And then he said to me, well, I'm retiring. And you know what happens when a priest retires? There's no guarantee, this parish is going to stay open. And then with the restructuring. So that was kind of eliminated as every other, I think I must have looked at 30 different sites and not just Catholic churches, but the answer was just no. And found a commercial property, which was not my first place to go because there's no green space and the cost. And then I thought I had a large donor, and then that door closed. And I called my board chair, who's very strong in his faith, and said, Tony, I don't know what to do. I said, is this God telling me he's closing the door? Is this the time? Has it run its course? Do we look at phasing this out? And he said, no, Kristy. And he said, you go knock on another door. And I immediately thought of Father Solanus because he actually woke my grandfather up from a coma. So he is a special person in my heart. Yeah. And the next morning, my friend Craig from the Catholic Initiative had mailed me a sticker of Father Solanus for my computer. And I opened up my computer with kind of like, all right, let's go open doors. And the first, and he's on my computer right now, is Father Solanus. So I've adopted him as my patron saint for this next chapter, as we're calling it, for Kids on the Go. And another beautiful thing happened. So that door closed, and I met with a local Catholic Family Foundation. And I reached out and said, I'd like to, tell you a little bit about what's going on with Kids on the Go. And I know you do a lot already for the Catholic nonprofits around us. So sometimes you don't want to knock on their doors too many, right? Too many times. So he had me come in and we sat down and talked for an hour. And I love when I can talk about my faith journey through all of this. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, Kristy, we'd like to be your top donor. And I felt like the story is starting to be told again. And that door opened, and this family is a part of this story now. And that going back to, you use the word hope in your opening. For the first 2 years, my word was hope. And I kind of tied it with what our archdiocese have been practicing in the Year of Hope and Year of Hope Jubilee year. And this year, my word turned to trust. And really trying to trust in his plan for Kids on the Go, and also trying to decipher, again, like what I said, was this the time to be done with this, or am I supposed to keep going? And, Lord, open the door if I'm supposed to keep this going. And he did. So it's given me a lot lighter feel. I think it's a great story to tell people who are really doubting, and trusting. Yeah. Trusting, as we know, is so hard to do. It's so hard to do. So I actually talked to that donor today. He called to check in on things. And I told him it's going to be on here. Yeah. And I told him, I said, you're part of my story. You're part of this new beginning and this future, and hopefully generations to come.
Well, it sounds. I just keep thinking about how, okay, here's a plan, or here's, like, again, we have this facility, we have this school. Great, they're not going to sell it, they're not going to release it, or whatever. They're going to take care of it. We're established, and then the rug gets pulled out. Okay, well, here's another opportunity. No, the rug's not there, and as you're describing it, it takes a couple moments to describe, but that's years of uncertainty, right? In your life.
2 years of dismay. It'll be 2 years. Yes.
And that's that sense of like, I don't know. And even like you're saying, that sense of when we started this, there's so many blessings. We started this, there's so much opportunity. And we started this, there's so many good things happening. God, are you putting an end to this, or do you want us to
Correct.
fight? And that's, wow,
Correct.
that's such
Father
like
Mike, the building owner, you'll love this part of the story. So, know him through the community. And when I walked in, he got choked up. He is a dad of 3 kids, and their youngest, not even a year, was diagnosed, and they were told all these horrible things. And he looked at me and he told me the story, and he says, I got on my knees and said, God, whatever you can do to help my son, please help, give him a better path. Turns out that he was misdiagnosed. This young man he's at St. Paul Catholic School today, doing phenomenal, no delays. And the building owner has also pledged a large donation towards his building, because he said he feels like this is God kind of like just a thank you in giving back.
Yeah.
And that there's no coincidence that I'm the one that this building's been sitting empty that now is coming forward. So,
Wow.
it's just so beautiful to see God working through so many, weaving his way through this. I'm still working on a name for the campus of the center. So I'm praying on that too. And I know he'll give me the right words and the right name. So
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, just even so, I just have the sense that here you are going from this small program where you're the one person with all these kids, and getting people around you. What did it take for you to now 60 employees, people working there? God willing, new facility, what did it take for you to move from that small program to something like, so in the Catholic Initiative, it's all about sustainability. It's all about saying,
Right.
what are those incredible ministries that are really doing the work of Jesus, right? The corporal works of mercy, and making them sustainable. How did it happen for you to be moved from that small program to something sustainable?
God putting the right people in my path.
Yeah.
2018, I keep talking about that year. So this move year, I had started a Bible study at Star of the Sea Catholic School, where my kids went to school, because let's face it, there weren't a lot of Bible studies for young moms and convenience. So I said, why don't we do it after drop off? The moms can bring the kids who aren't in school. We don't care about the noise. And there was a young mom that was packing her 2 kiddos up. And I said, she's like, I get out of here. I have to go. I'm interviewing for a job up the road someplace. I'm like, well, what are you going to interview for? And she goes, I have a master's in nonprofit management. Now, a week prior, I met with a donor who said to me, Kristy, you are the face of Kids in the Go. As a donor, I want to know if something happens to you, that this money is going to continue to be invested in this program. And I said, okay, that's great advice. Who is that person going to be? A week later, and I looked at Katie and I said, Katie, please don't go to St. John's right now. I said, can you just meet with me next week as a consultant and talk about how you might be able to help me look at the sustainability plan for Kids in the Go? Her and I met, and the rest is history. Hired her that day. Let's be part of my team. And our growth has been incredible with her coming on. And every person that's come into my life, there's no such thing as coincidence. And even this year, we hired somebody new, an associate director that will become the executive director in 2027, and I'm going to stay on in donor relations. But is again that sustainability. If I want Kids in the Go to be around for the next 30 years, what does it look like? So, but he keeps blessing me with the right people, and I have never. My board joked with me like, when it's time for you to step down, we're going to have to do a national search and blah blah blah. And they laughed when this recent person came into the play, and they said, only you. It would happen that way. So there is no such thing as coincidence. I call them God winks, and that is really, that's the only story I can tell, is just the people that have come into the Kids in the Go, and it's helped it grow with their values and their passion for kids with special needs.
Well, that's amazing. That sense of, okay, how do you go from the small operation to sustainability is it sounds like, I was going to say, keep your eyes open, keep praying, and God brings them. But also there's that sense for you to be able to have that awareness of, okay, what is going to be, if we keep going, what are we going to need? And having people around you who can also, maybe if you can't see it, people who are going to say, okay, we need a succession plan, or we need some kind of, again, if something happens to you, we need someone who also can be that face, someone who also could be that voice to tell the story about Kids on the Go, and that they just show up. You pray, you see what you need, and they show up. That's amazing.
And I think building that culture, right? But also, I just had this conversation today with Katie. I said, it's also important that we hire for our weaknesses. We're not all perfect, right? We're not good at everything. And who's going to complement the organization and fill some of those gaps where maybe I'm not strong or the next person's not strong. So I think that's an important thing too, and keeping your eyes open for sustainability for that too.
Well, that's so important too, because again, going back to the mission of Catholic Initiative about sustainability and saying,
Mm-hmm.
what are those incredible ministries that are doing incredible work? They can't just be based on one person, right? They can't just be based on a cult of personality or one person's gifts, but it has to be more than that, or else it won't be, by
Correct.
nature, won't be sustainable. And then I'm guessing that you being in your community and you being involved, I mean, even the fact that you found Katie at the Bible study, like that sense of you being involved with networking and community, how have those relationships, like how important is it to share that mission, and how have those relationships shaped your mission?
It's so important, right? And my husband's involved. He's on the board for the Catholic Foundation, and just in building that community and putting people around you in that networking, and people, again, like even I talked about finding people who complement your weaknesses, but also finding people like-minded, right? That lift you up, that are, prayerful, and that you can turn to and say, hey, pray with me. And, the Catholic Initiative's kind of a fun story, and another God wink is, so was it last May? I went to an event kind of kicking and screaming because my husband and I do a lot of these. And he's like, it's close. I said, okay. So I sit down at this table next to Craig Horvath and Mike McLaughlin.
Yeah.
No such thing as coincidence, right? And we hit it off right away. And it was kind of that instant friendship. And it's blessed me with getting to know Kevin and, the whole Catholic Initiative crew. And then it was at the Catholic Foundation Gala, which, I saw you there. I was in the lobby and I was talking to Chris Walsh. And I really was at this fearful point. And he looked at me, I'll never forget this, and said, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And it was one of those that kind of caught me. And he says, God's got you, don't be afraid. And he was one of the first people I texted when I got this big gift. And ironically, there was a halo today. I think it was Mark and Jonathan are doing the Get Prayed Up. And today was about being not afraid. And I looked ahead, tomorrow's trust in him, So it's being not afraid, but that those people that come into your life, that building the community and the network that continue to lift me and guide me and direct me in new paths and put me, in the spots where I need to be, but then never forgetting your roots, right? Like my church where I was raised and got married, and my husband and I met. We went to the same grade school and knew each other, and he asked me out at church. So it's like, that's my community, and they lift me up, and people say, why do you go there? It's like, well, that's my community, and they lift me up. So in that's what it's all about, and those are the people that I've watched my kids grow up, and that's what's important to, to us.
Well, you're mentioning so many different places, people, relationships that have just shaped you, but also shaped the kids on the go and have kept it going, moving forward. Is there a story or an experience you've had, a person that kind of captures for you, like your why behind everything that you do?
Oh, 100. I'll give you a couple quick ones.
Yeah.
So Kids on the Go, like I said, has been around for 28 years. So CJ was in the program for developmental delays. So I'm on a board at Michigan State, and I went up for a board meeting, and CJ and I met for coffee, and he was in his final year of law school at Michigan State. And I said, CJ, look how far you've come. I've known you how long? What are you going to specialize in law? He says, I want to go into disability law. So this is a young man who was in the program for developmental delays and now is an attorney out there advocating for those who have special needs. Kendall, she was a premature baby and had delays, and went through our program, watched her grow up, and now she's a critical care nurse within a local at a local hospital. And most recently, some current campers, a grandma raising her granddaughter had sent me a text of a letter from the state of Michigan. Her granddaughter has autism, and she's been in the program since she was 3. She's in high school now. And her grandma said, without Kids on the Go, we would not have received this letter. She was asked to be in, advanced placement classes and has just excelled and doing well. And then Torrance, when he was 3, I'll never forget, a T-stool is a thing he was in therapy that's heavy. He threw it across the room. And I remember thinking, oh boy, this is a danger. And, how do we work with these behaviors. And our physical therapist says, no, let me work with him. Torrance did our bowling program too. He made his high school bowling team. He's been on honor roll, and his mom invited me to his National Honor Society induction last week for his high school.
Wow.
So those are the things.
Yeah.
And then in it's no such thing as coincidence when I'm having my weak moments that I get a text from a grandparent or parent of these success stories that remind me. Or this one dad, Gary, looked at me in the eyes when I was told this building was coming down. He says, Kristi, you're doing God's work. Everything's going to be okay. So those are the stories that lift me and keep me going.
Yes, so encouraging. Like
Yes.
especially when you're tempted to lose heart, that
Yes.
thing that like just gives that encouragement, which is what as you know, we all need that, because there are times where it's like, I don't know, like you've been going so long that it's just like, I don't know how to keep going. But how about this for someone who might be listening right now and feels a tug, like they want to help somehow, whatever there's in their life, but they don't know where to start. What would you say to them?
To listen to that tug. That tug is a real thing. I mean, I call it a whisper. Yours is a tug. And start exploring like what you can do to make a difference in the community, and start small. It could be just volunteering at a local nonprofit, or, go where your passion is. Is it animals? Is it seniors? Is it kids? Is it the homeless? Is it your church ministry? Start small, volunteer. And there's so much joy and reward in working, and never, and just keep exploring, talk to other people that are doing the same things and find out how they got there. And I had a mentor, and I'm always offering that to other people who are starting out, like, and guiding them. So I have encouraged them to ask questions and explore, because that could be God whispering in their ear too and tugging at their heart, and don't ignore it.
Well, that's so good. So you, and as a part of that role of being able to be the one who helps them take the next step, helps them start, especially like, okay, here's what I've done. And just even giving witness. I think that's so important, where like you can say, I feel like I'm the only one. Am I the only one who's actually going to do any of this work? Or am I the only one who's actually going to take a step out there? For you to be able to say, look, no, I've done this before. Here's what you can listen for. I mean, in fact, I would ask you the question, what does it look like for you in your experience to say yes to God in a practical way? Are there any things that you have the sense that he's calling you to start, or is it just stuff that he's calling you to continue doing?
I think my current calling is to help, with that sustainability plan, with the next steps for Kids in the Go, continue to be an advocate for our families and our parents. And, nothing gets me more frustrated when a parent says to me, my child couldn't do this. It's like, well, why not? Because how can we get them there? It should never be no, it should be how can we modify, right? So I think being an advocate, and giving testimony, right? Like this today, it's like, we all have these career callings, right? And you can still be called. Obviously it's easy when you're called to be a priest, right? I'm called to do what I'm doing, but you can do it as a financial planner. You can do it as an electrician. You can all find your calling and what your gifts are. And that would be my encouragement, is just how encouragement for others is like, to kind of take a deep look in and like, what is your calling within what you're currently doing, and how can you feel fulfilled that way?
Yeah, that's so good. And the fact that you're saying this, that here you are, a speech pathologist, working with people and saying, okay, I'm called to do this. Anyone, wherever they're at. I mean, because that's, and in fact, it's not even just the call, it's the commission, right? To go be the hands and the feet, the heart and the face of Jesus.
100%.
I have one last question.
Yes.
Because this, we're talking about called, and this podcast is literally entitled Called. When you hear the words, you are called, what do they mean to you? Or do they stir something up in your heart that just convicts or confirms something?
My first words that come to mind are I'm blessed. And I tell people that all the time, like, how lucky am I to be able to take what I went to school for and to turn it into a ministry? And, I often say in the nonprofit world, 99, I think my customer satisfaction is probably higher than most priests. Like I have a 99.5% satisfaction rate, because our therapy's free. Our parents are getting something they couldn't afford. Their kids are getting opportunities to grow and to have experience wellness and health and all of those things through Kids in the Go. So I'm really blessed and not to have to be in that corporate world anymore, where all those rules are, and we have rules and regulations. I have all the same filings, but it's just different. So I'm blessed. And I'm honored to carry that. And as tough as it's been, it's still a blessing to work with the families and the children I do, and to serve the special needs community.
Wow. And lives are being changed. Lives are being changed.
I
Amazing.
really pray that. Yes, every day. I mean, that's the point, right? That's the
Entire
point.
families
is
even
make
too.
a difference. Yes.
Yeah.
To give encouragement, to give hope, we always say, our mission really, Kids on the Go, is to maintain their goals. If we make progress, we're thrilled. A lot of our kids do. But, if they can make friendships and they can have self-confidence, but if we can be a safe place for them to learn and to grow, then I've done my job.
That's amazing, and your job is incredible. I mean, just the way you're allowing people to participate in this, and they get to share their gifts. It is really, really remarkable. So, Kristi, I'm so grateful for your time. If there's anything that you'd say, hey, someone listening to this who's inspired by Kids on the Go, where should they go for more information if they want to learn more about your work and your ministry?
Like most people, our website, right? kidsonthegocamp.com. And we do have Instagram, Facebook, and a small presence on LinkedIn, but Instagram and Facebook, we have a lot of, if you want to keep up with programming live, but our website has a lot of information too. And we love visitors. So if you're in the Detroit area, we also have a chapter up in Traverse City. So if you're up there, and come see us and stop in and see what we're doing.
Go to Traverse City, the cherry capital of the world.
Yes, very good.
I know my stuff. I know Michigan relatively well.
You've gotten to know Michigan really well.
I know there's a mitten involved or something like
Yes,
this.
there's a mitten involved. Yes, we're just across the pond, right?
Awesome. Well, once again, Kristi, I'm so grateful. It was great to meet you in person. It's great to have this time with you virtually. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your calling to do this. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who made this possible today.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who's listening to Called. You might know this podcast is made possible by the Catholic Initiative, which is doing our best to inspire both faith and action, both of them together, by investing in vibrant but under-resourced Catholic communities through the restoration of iconic parishes, restoration of schools, and restoration of community institutions. If you want to learn more about their projects at Catholic Initiative, or discover how you can make a difference, you can visit thecatholicinitiative.org. Remember, the gospel is more than words. The gospel is a way of life. As Jesus reminds us in Matthew chapter 25, when we serve the least of these, we serve him. So until next time, let's keep listening for God's call, and let's have the courage to answer it. God bless.